I'm from a Chinese family, so they wanted me to do a sort of reputable career. Like, if you're a lawyer, an accountant, or the traditional stuff. So it was a struggle to go to art school. And I really, I thought I really had to sort of fight to say, this is what I really want to do in my life. And to my parents' credit, even though they were against it, they finally agreed, and they said, go ahead and do this. It's what we've tried everything to discourage you, from bribing you to whatever it is, and you're still saying, no, this is what I want to do, and it's my life and all the rest of it. So and they supported me to go to art school. At the time, I'd lived in London in the UK for 10 years. And in the early 90s, it was really, in terms of fashion and what was going on, everything seemed to be happening in New York. And it was sort of like a destination for me. I wanted to come because for some reason I wanted to, which I still can't explain, I wanted to work at Ralph Lauren because the style wasn't really me, but I just felt like I needed to experience that culture to see how and why it was such a, and it still is, at the time it was such a phenomenon, right? And in the UK, people globally, people loved Ralph Lauren, and he was sort of selling the British lifestyle back to the British. I started with my husband. At the time, we were starting to get a little bit bored with the whole corporate thing. I started doing a weekend store in upstate New York, close to where I live, in High Falls. A friend of ours had a little hole in the wall, really beautiful space, and said, you can rent it for not very much money. And we started putting things in there that we liked and wanted to do, kind of almost as a sort of frustration and opposite to what we were having to do in the corporate world. And from there, it went to wholesale because we opened a bigger store in Hudson, and a fashion sort of showroom agent walked in one day and said, I love what you're doing here. Can we just take this and put it in my showroom and wholesale it? So I started wholesaling from there. Sort of a little unprepared. I was like, well, if I was going to do a collection for wholesale, this isn't what I would do, but here's the opportunity. Let's just go with it. I do still work with Anthropology and Urban Outfitters because we have a very similar sort of taste level and we fit together very well. But it became to the point where I'm actually now design individual designs and embroideries, and I sell those to them, and they take it away and they do the manufacturing. So now I have a business where that's where my business morphed to. I became a sort of inspiration supplier. I love doing it, and I think it comes through because you pick a garment because there's something, you connect with it in some way, and when you have that connection, the embroidery that I put onto it, I think it shows, it somehow comes through, because I'm not the only person who does this, but whenever I've shown it to people, the feedback that I've had is like, everyone's always been very positive about my work and said your work is amazing and I love what you do. And it's so easy for this sort of thing to just sort of fall onto the sort of wrong side of embellishing or upcycling in a way. And I kind of know what they mean. So I'm always very flattered when they say that to me, like there's something that I'm doing that is working. Yes, there are people who don't understand. This is a piece of rag to some people, because it is. And you just have to be respectful of where they're coming from, and you just say, yeah, it is quite a lot of money for a bit of a rag of a t-shirt. You're right. And you just let it go. I don't think it's my place to say, well, I've, spent, it's just not I'm not going to be like, well, I spent this much money on embroidering it, and how do you put a price on what comes out of my head? And there is all of that, but you just have to leave it. I think if it doesn't compromise the integrity, and by that I mean the physical integrity of the items, like the bag's not going to fall apart, or the sleeve's not going to fall off. It's part of the history of the garment or the item, and I feel like if it's going to fall apart, then you repair it, and that repair is part of the history of that garment. It's sort of that Japanese wabi-sabi concept of when you repair something, you make it more beautiful, because it's lived more of a life, and it's better than before, when there's this concept of when something is straight off a production line, it's at its peak or its most beautiful perfection, and I don't believe in that.